Hola, Jefas, and welcome to this episode of the Everyday Jefa. I am your host, Bessy Martinez, and we're really excited that you are joining us, whether you are watching on our YouTube channel or listening to us from any of your preferred platforms for podcasts. We are so grateful that you're here. Remember, you can always go back to any of our episodes to listen to other Jefas sharing their inspiring stories, leading conversations in their field of expertise, and just really welcoming you into our little hogar. Nuestra casa is tu casa. And so we are just here having conversation with other jefas out there in the community that are doing great and amazing things. And I'm really excited because every single time that we have a guest come on here on with us, I get to learn so much about them just as much as you do. So thank you so much for our guest today that is joining us. I have had such an amazing time so far interviewing a lot of guests this season, which I guess would be year 3 of the Everyday Jefa podcast. And I'm so honored and so grateful to be able to have these mujeres out here sharing their story and also taking up space alongside with many of you. And remember, you can always follow us on social media. We are on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, the Everyday Jefa and Co. And of course, the Everyday Jefa podcast. So shall we like get right to it? I'm so happy and excited to welcome our guest for the day. I see a trend right now. I'm getting a lot of guests that are coming to us from the East Coast. And so, of course, there's another somebody that's coming to us from the East Coast. Pilar, thank you so much for joining us to the Everyday Jefa podcast. And please share with the listeners and the viewers and our audience who you are, what's going on with life, before we dive into all these amazing questions I have for you.
Yes. Hi. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. Your content is phenomenal. I think the platform you've built is just so beautiful. It's wonderful to have a space where we can see each other just thriving and growing. And of course, congrats to you on all your continued success and all the amazing events that you have coming up. But thank you for having me. So me, it's like when I feel like that's always the hardest question. Tell me about yourself and kind of who you are. So I'm María del Pilar. I go by Pilar, as you see. Pilar, Pili, Pilarcita. As in true Latina form, I have about 80 nicknames, but most people call me Pilar. And I'm a marketing executive and a founder. I'm located in New York on the East Coast, so representing our East Coast Latinas. And really, for the past 15 years, on the business side, I've been focused on helping brands go through culture first storytelling, creator partnerships, and really like community led strategy. And I focus on that in social and streaming and live moments. That's kind of my bread and butter. Most recently, I was a VP at TelevisaUnivision, where I was on the partnerships team. There, I focused on CPG and beauty. I had over 100 brands and a really big portfolio. It was amazing work and really helped brands show up credibly in culture and with the Latino audience. And I focused also on go to market strategy. And since then, I've now kind of just been refocusing on me. I had a baby and became a first time mom. I was a cat mommy. But now I became a human boy mom, which has been new and fun and super like retador, but an amazing phase. I'm looking at what I want to kind of do next in my career, but I found that having my son really plugged me back into who I was creatively and kind of more of my community based work. So I've been doing a lot of passion projects, hopefully a podcast that will be launching soon, and just kind of like building in my own space and rediscovering myself in a lot of ways and doing more of this connecting with other women in the industry and in the space.
Well, welcome to the Boy Mom Club. I have 2 boys of my own. No, they are not little. They are pretty much adults at this point. And so, yeah, I think there's just something different, something unique about boy moms.
You
Not saying that
survived it.
yes,
You survived
twice.
it. I will survive it. Okay. So I
Yes,
feel better.
yes, twice over. I will say though that coffee definitely is part of the reason I was able to survive it, even to this day. They're just when they say mama's boys, it's not so much that there's so much clingy. There's just some sort of energy between the mom and the
Mhm.
son that I think is so beautiful. There are times where I'm like, I really wanted to have the girl so I could have, the another girl in the house because it's only boys
Yeah.
except for me. But that's okay because we have Chiquita, who was our Chihuahua. She came into the picture not too long ago, so she's my girl. But
She
my
gave you the girl.
boys are my boys. Like I am all to that. I mess with them, you mess with me times
I
10.
love that. I love
And so
that.
And so I have a lot of friends that are actually having, kids within the last year or so, and a lot of them are having boys. So I don't know what's going on.
Everyone I know is
Hasn't
having boys. I'm like, "Where are the girls?" And I'm such like I feel like I'm such a rah-rah, like, feminist. I was like, "You know what?" Someone told me, they said, "It's good because someone like you is having a boy so you can raise a really great, supportive man." And I was like, "Oh, I love that. I love that." And
Yeah.
I have my baby girl, big sister, La Gatica, Conchita. She's Maria Concepcion, but for short, Conchita, and that's my girl. So I was like, "Okay, I got my girl."
Yeah.
I was like, "I
Yes.
can't dress her up." And I was like,
Yeah.
"Now I have my boy." But I mean, the boy rough and tumble, climbs me all day. Like, I had to go I was saying, do the moms was I like, I need the boy mom haircut because they're just pulling your hair all day long.
Yes. Yep. I had to cut my hair. My hair is curly and I had to cut it because I don't know what it is. They just shove their fingers in there and then
Yes,
they
even
don't
in a
hold them in.
ponytail.
Hmm?
He pulls it out and, like, pulls himself up. I'm like, "No, I need a haircut."
Yes. No. And all the things, that you get to hear, like, I think somebody once said that you have the children that you are meant. Like, you are already equipped to be able to bring into the world to
I love that.
become. And so I'm like, okay, well, I guess I was born to have boys so that way I could have a different generation come up
Yeah,
from, the one that I grew up in. And so it's a beautiful thing. I'm so
it
happy
is.
to have this conversation with another boy mom. So I was reading your bio, and I said on there and I'm pretty sure you mentioned this earlier that you're a Bronx native. How do you
Yes.
think that has shaped you into what you're doing now, through culture, power, and visibility? Kind of take us
Yeah.
through that journey.
No, absolutely. So yes, I was born in Manhattan and lived there for about 2 years. And I'm 37 now, and I just moved 3 years ago. So I spent almost my entire life in the Bronx. I lived a few years in Manhattan, but I'm like a Bronx girl through and through. It's really interesting because the Bronx, if you're from the East Coast and if you're from New York, at least back in the day, it was just like people would like give you look. I mean, I remember being in corporate and I would say I was from the Bronx. I would get like this. I remember someone like they like recoiled, like they went back and they're like, "Oh."
Mhm.
And I was like, "What is going on?" And for me, all I knew about the Bronx was this beautiful group of people I had grown up with, the greenest borough in New York City, which people forget. It's like incredibly green. It's families. It's where I lived my childhood and like adored living. So there was a big disconnect, but it was one of my first insights into people's conceived notions about groups of people and that it doesn't feel I didn't enjoy being an exception to someone's expectation. And I didn't thrive in that space. I think that happens a lot where people are like, "Oh, you're different." I'm like, "That's not a point of pride for me." Like that it's not, it's insulting. And I was so proud of where I came from and everything. So I think it taught me early on to one, not care about people's perception or expectations, but also two, to understand the really, really like all the power in storytelling and how people could tell stories that for me were complete made no sense to the story that I knew to be true, but how powerful it is the imagery that you see because people would be like, "Oh yeah, in the movies, you see in the Bronx and everything," and I was just like, so I think one of the reasons I was so passionate early on about like wanting to be behind a camera, not as a creative per se as a director, but someone who was funneling dollars into productions and deciding on ideas behind creative concepts was that the ability to kind of inform how a story could be told about an audience. I remember early on in my career, I'll say it now openly, someone from Facebook that was working with me. I won't say where I was working, but they were from Facebook and they were working with us. I mean, went on and on about how much they hated the Bronx and how, I mean, they used really terrible language and all stuff. And I said to him, I said, the people in the Bronx pay my salary. I was like, that's one of our biggest consumers. You can guess where I was working. I was like, that's one of the biggest consumers. I said, they pay my salary. I was like, and you're here because we are spending with Facebook. So they pay your salary. I said,
Yeah.
so those people you don't like, we have jobs because of them. Maybe we should be a little bit more aware of how we talk about them. But yeah, I think early on it really inspired me to be like, I'm just gonna do whatever I want. People have misconceptions, they'll think what they want, and I
Yeah.
really don't care. And I'll own my story and tell my story. And it's important to tell those stories. And I view marketing and advertising as a really, really powerful vehicle because if you think about it, you see a ton of movies, you see a ton of shows, but you see
Yeah.
so much advertising. I remember in college, we were asked about what's some of the best representations. It was in a Black Studies class. What's some of the best representations you've seen of Black families? What are some ones that you don't agree with? And so everyone was kind of sharing, different shows, Living Single, Cosby Show, etc. I thought of this McDonald's ad that I had like always remembered. And it was about a young black father and his son. And they do this kind of back and forth about, Daddy, why do you shave your head? Oh, because your mom likes it. Daddy, why do we do this? Oh, because I like it. Or because you like, why do you buy me these toys? Because you like it. And they go to McDonald's and they sit down. He goes, Daddy, why do we go to McDonald's together? And he said, because I like it. And you have this beautiful moment of like, he does this because he loves to spend time with his son. But in that moment, I also realized, I was like, oh, the example that comes to my mind is advertising. Advertising is really powerful. And so I think all of that combined led me, and I was very into social, and I love social as a new space to tell stories and to connect and express yourself very kind of independently. I think YouTube did that really early on. You could just craft your own narrative. And so I ended up in a space where it was like social and storytelling. Okay, well, I'll be in marketing where I can craft stories and do kind of very freely, and where I was seeing most of the interesting work happening, but you could kind of reclaim narratives and tell very powerful stories.
Yeah, and I think that's where I think what's actually where we currently are, right? Is now we're trying, and it's not just in marketing, just almost every sector that you possibly think of. Especially Latinos are starting to find ways to be able to take back the narrative. It's been
Mhm.
always told by somebody that is
Yes.
not within
Yep.
their production, maybe. But then I also feel like a lot of it is probably like you mentioned before. It's an emotional. It's an emotional moment that they probably had, and they kind of set in their mind, and that's what they
Yes.
just assumed that everybody else was like, right? Versus saying, "Hey,
Mhm.
you had one experience, but that's not all of the
Yeah.
experiences. That's not culturally speaking, that's not for everybody, for all of." And even Latinos
Mhm.
within our own community, we're not like,
Yes.
muy cubano is not the same like the Salvadorian, like the Mexicano, like even our narratives
Yeah.
within our own culture
Mhm.
shifts and changes. Um, so my next question to you is, when you're thinking about your younger version, what is it that you recognize now as an adult, uh, that you that you probably didn't realize at the time as a child that now you're like, oh, like almost like the aha moment. Like this happened to me as a kid. I didn't know that it was happening, but now as an adult, I'm realizing, oh, okay, that moment in time is either what shaped me or is really what kind of made me start to think about becoming a creative without really knowing what I was a creative to begin with.
Yeah, so I'll give you, like, kind of maybe a little bit of a different answer. I think growing up, even now, I'll hear a lot of times that say, like, you have to push against your culture to be successful because the messages we received growing up might have, especially as a woman, weren't the right ones, etc. And I just never had that experience growing up. Like, I know people will mention that, ay, calladita, más bonita. And I respect people so much who that's their experience, but it just wasn't the one that I had. Like, I grew up in a family of women who, listen, it was a more conservative Catholic family, but like my tias were like super educated, going out into doing new jobs, like, building families, building businesses. My mom had left Puerto Rico and come to New York and she's like, let me try something different. And my parents always really encouraged me to be very verbal. And when I would chat and say, they weren't like, oh no, don't speak. They were like, oh my gosh, look at how opinionated she is. This is hilarious. This is great. So I found that the things that I grew up with culturally were never things for me to push against. Even like the idea of, we're very hardworking, but we need to know how to network or how to do the politics. I'm like, but who's better at networking or politics than Latinos? We make friends with everyone. And the
Yeah,
hardworking, I built my entire career on hard work. People knew I was doing it, right? It's important to kind of show it. But I was very successful off of hard work because hard work, I think, especially now in the age of AI, more than ever, people value people who can actually do the work. So I think there were a lot of lessons I grew up with. And then as I got a little bit older, I was like, oh, this all prepared me, everything I
yeah,
learned. And there's more that you can have, but I think everything about my culture. So I always push back a little bit because I understand people will say there's things that we have to kind of, leave aside. But I feel like all the things that I was learning from my culture totally prepared me for corporate America. The networking, building relationships, always having a kind word for someone, always have a helping hand. That's a big thing in corporate. When you're always someone can count on, when you need something,
yeah,
they're there for you. That's how you build relationships. But the idea too of being just hardworking, never giving up, having a tenacity, even when things are tough, trying to keep your spirit going, knowing you're coming from really powerful people who have lived
yeah,
through incredible things. So I don't know if that answers the question, but it's something I've
yeah.
had on my mind where I feel like so much of how I grew up, and it was like maybe not one particular moment, but all the different elements of my cultural upbringing that I think very much prepared me for corporate and have led me to be successful. And I lean on that. When there's sometimes people will say, no, you need to do a little bit more politicking or you need to do a little bit more of this. I'm like, I've got this formula that I grew up with and it's been working for me so far. I don't think I'm going to let it go. And it's the most true to me also.
Right, and I mean, it should as it should be, right? Like,
Hmm.
even those circumstances, like you mentioned before, from the person or the perspective of the person that did come, raise up in the Calladita era
Yeah.
or foundation, even they take that and either they make it one of 2 ways. They either say, "You know what? I didn't like how that
Hmm.
felt, and it felt too
Yeah.
restricting. I knew that was never me, so therefore now I'm gonna show up as me,
Yes.
whatever that looks like." Or they use it as saying, "That is still how I spearhead forward." Even if maybe that's their identity, it's not so much
Hmm.
that they shrink themselves, it's just that maybe they handle things a little bit more on the quieter side versus
Yes.
the bold and the audacious, which is perfectly great and normal for anybody, right? Like there's no guidelines, there's no rules,
100%.
there shouldn't actually be any of the above. It's just a matter of how are you showing up that suits you, and makes you feel like you're giving your 200%. And so when you were working at Univision, how much of that now shifting into into your corporate roles and spaces, how much of that do you think um, took part in a lot of the responsibilities that you had to deal with behind the scenes when you worked at Univision and the other companies?
Yeah, I mean, I was really lucky. I was at Univision. I was at L'Oreal. Before that, I was at Univision. And before that, I worked in the PR and fashion space. So I was lucky to be in a few places, but a lot of my career happens at Univision. I'm very grateful for everything that they taught me. I held a lot of different roles. I will tell you, it is a very interesting thing, especially coming from public relations and fashion, to find yourself in New York and sitting in like the big boardroom conference room and for meetings to be held in Spanish. I remember I had never seen something like that.
Mhm.
And I mean, even so more at the Miami headquarters, but to see people who were respected, considered very like, high up, educated, etc., giving full presentations in Spanish, when sometimes like I think particularly in New York, if you were speaking Spanish, people would assume you didn't speak English, not that you were bilingual. And so it was like I remember the first time I almost teared up because I was so like moved. This language that I had grown up speaking with my parents and everything, this was the business language. This was the language of executives, and it was so respected and beautiful and everything. And there were many people who didn't speak Spanish, Latinos included at Univision, but it was just really incredible because I'd never experienced that. And the role that I held was ones that focused on because I was like I started out being at Univision, so I would tweet and like post on Facebook for Univision, like I was the person you were talking to on Twitter for a few years. It was very much based on writing and crafting content in Spanish. Obviously, now that's evolved, but I think I was very lucky in that I was just in a space full of a lot of Latinos and a lot of Latinos at all stages. So there was probably, right, and I say I was lucky for this, there's probably a lot of cultural things about me too that were welcomed that in other spaces might have not. And I think that's built why I'm very extroverted, but I'm also a very shy
Mhm.
person. I feel very confident saying I don't wanna be in spaces that don't welcome me. I just have
Yeah.
no desire to make space at anyone else's table. If there's not a chair waiting for me, I'm happy to go, somewhere else, and I think it's because I spent so much time amongst people for who, my big personality, talking with my hands, maybe not so much the Bronx thing, that was still, I think, a little bit but, being from an immigrant, family, all these things was very normal and also were the things they hired me for, right? Because I understood the culture, I could do the work that they were selling to clients, and I could do the work that advertisers wanted because I had that, lived experience. So, I think in that way, I was really, really lucky, and it prepared me for when I went into other spaces to feel quite comfortable saying, "Hey, if this is too much for you, then that's okay, maybe I should be somewhere else." And I've
Right.
been lucky that I think that hasn't, happened as much, but maybe because I just go in with that and I've got blinders on to anything else.
No, I just think that that's just, you maybe have just not necessarily not uh known just one thing. You have just chosen
Mhm.
consciously to decide like this is the pathway and this is how I want to do things. If there's
Yeah.
no right or wrong for anybody else. However, for me personally, this is the way I'm gonna approach things. How I
Yeah.
want to be able to push forward and navigate through any of the spaces that I'm able to walk into. One of the things I also read on your bio, you were talking about cultural first storytelling. So we hear that a lot now, I think more
Yes.
than ever. But I don't think people still truly understand what that means because we teams tend to segregate words, versus looking at it collectively as one full sentence. So what do you think it means in the actual practice?
Yeah, I think that's a great question because everyone throws the word culture. So I think there's two ways you can approach it, and you have to understand it's kind of all one and the same. So there's the idea, I think the traditional sense of culture, we should be like, oh, the country you're living in and the country your family's coming from. And that
Mhm.
the language, the food, the music of that specific experience is your culture. Then there's, I think, what is the lived experience and what's happening in the moments. And that, which I think is a more modern take of it, is a mix of many things. What we're seeing now in marketing, which I'm really excited about because I did a lot of that type of work, is a more like hyper localization of the content we create and the messaging we create. Because the reality is that my culture coming up in the Bronx as the daughter of a Puerto Rican woman who had me basically as soon as she came to New York, but lived her entire life in Puerto Rico, an Argentine father living in a predominantly Italian American neighborhood, going to a predominantly Black and Latino school is very different from a Puerto Rican Argentine girl in Miami. Wildly different. There are connectors between Italian Americans, between the Black community, between myself, that are very closely tied because we are in close proximity in the Bronx. We're sharing a lot of things that I might go to Miami with someone who's Puerto Rican and we may have less in common. And so I think, and also the timing and the space, right? In the 90s, in the early aughts, what I grew up with, all of that. So I think now we're understanding that when we talk about like culture led, it has to be because you can't just be creating thousands of individual content pieces. You have to have general content that speaks to the moment, but has hints of everything that everyone's kind of living or experiencing. And so we did one time I worked on this campaign for a finance client, and it was the story of a Dominican young woman who was working in music. Her family had come from DR. She had come from DR as a young girl. She was doing music in English and Spanish, and she told the story of how like her mom learned to do hair because they had to save money because it's very expensive to make a career in music. People don't realize very expensive. So like her mom would sew her outfits and would learn to do hair so she could do her makeup and her hair and her outfits for shows. And she was singing Spanish and English and she was talking about saving money. When we crafted that content, there were so many ways you could connect to it. You could connect to it if you were Dominican because you shared some of that story. You could connect to it if you were someone in music kind of doing your own thing. You could connect to it if you were someone who was bootstrapping their business with their family. Like when I remember when I heard her story, I kept thinking about Beyonce and her mom who would do their outfits for them. So it's like there were so many ways into those stories. And so I think this trend now that we're seeing, which is great, of leaning into hyper specific details about people, that actually then allows stories to become much more universal, which sometimes feels counterintuitive. You think, oh, well, if I'm really specific, no one's going to understand it. It's like, no, but those specificities, those
Yeah.
nuances is where people can connect. Because I connect all the time with someone who's Italian and Puerto Rican, someone who's, French, and Ecuadorian and whatever. I'm like, yeah, because, Argentine people are kind of like, they're different from people in the Caribbean. So we have that shared thing. Different countries, but we can both talk about what it's like to have these very different like influences in your life. And so I think the hyper specific is where like culture led marketing goes now. And that can be very connecting versus I think trying to have one big message. Like, oh, Latinos love food. That doesn't really say anything.
Yeah.
So do Italians. So do like you've been with your Asian American friends' family. They throw it down in the kitchen too. Like
Yes.
it's too general. But when you get into the specifics, it's like that movie. I love this example with that movie Red. Um, when they show, and it's, I believe a Korean American family, when she's with her grandmother and they're watching the Korean soaps. I'm
Yeah.
like, every Latino understands this. This is you with your grandma watching novelas. Or when
Yep.
like her aunts are like, "Ta, ta, 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 ta," I'm like, oh, these are the tias. I was lucky my tias were much nicer, but it's like, these are the tia toxicas that they call who are like telling you that you're gaining weight and donde está el novio. I'm like, everyone can relate to this. But it's when you go really specific that then you kind of connect.
Yeah, I think somebody else that actually just recently did something more specific to that is Benito during Super Bowl because like I was too busy watching the actual halftime for the music, the entertainment than anything else.
Yeah.
Then you go back and you watch it 60 times later, you can see all of those small pieces and people have
Yes.
broken it down to how it was not just speaking about the Puerto Rican, his culture and stuff like that and what was happening and the history and stuff like that. But it also was into the like I completely didn't even realize there was a three-tiered cake until they brought it up
Yes.
and I'm like, oh my God, that is every quinceañera and I am not Mexicana, but like we still had
Yes.
it growing up in South Texas. The little boy that's sleeping on the chairs. Oh
Yes.
my
That's
God. That even to this day, when my kids were, we would go to quinceañeras or weddings. That is
yes.
still
I'm
us
like, that's
these days.
all of
Like, pull up
us.
a
Yeah.
chair, here's a blanket. go to sleep, so and it was in those details. And granted, I think it's like a
Yes.
12-minute show, but there were so
There's
many
so many
small
details.
pieces in there when you break up the of the greater performance, that everybody's like, "Oh my God, I can totally relate." And I don't have to be Latino, and I don't have to be from Puerto Rico. Everybody understood it.
They understand. It's like the child sleeping on a chair, I think is such a great example because it is very specific, right? You're laying across a group of chairs, like that brings back a memory. But for anyone who's been of any culture in a big family where they're always dragging their kids everywhere, they know. That's why I'm like, this is and I grew up because I grew up in a neighborhood that's Italian American, and a lot of Albanians too. I'm like, when they have their weddings, there's a tons because it's that. It's like, again, you go really specific, but the nugget of it is family, being in family, bringing your kids with you everywhere porque son bien unidos. And it's like that, to your point, everyone can connect to that. There might be details to it. Maybe you weren't across a few chairs, but they had a room in the house where you would go sleep because your parents were still chatting with somebody. Like anyone can kind of connect to that. There were so many things in that performance. And he brought in a lot of different pieces, but I think even like the casita thing, because I remember my grandma's house looking very much like that. A lot of people will tell you in different parts, whether like all over the world, because you build with the materials. It's also like kind of shared experiences, right? If you're in the country or more mountainous area, there's more wind, etc. So you do tend to build. You either build it like with wood or with concrete. Like you tend to use similar materials. I remember someone told me one time every country has their version of a carbohydrate and like a legume of some sort. So everyone's got like rice and beans, spaghetti. What I was trying to do is like pasta, and this other one. It's like if you go everywhere, you will find this because it makes a really good. It makes like it's all the amino acids that make a perfect protein, and it's just like we're so much more united that we realize. But again, not to say the same thing. It's like you go super specific, and for a few people, that exact example connects, but the spirit of it connects with everyone, or as many people as you can.
So kind of shifting a little bit into corporate, with the same idea of being able to be kind of super specific, but in the sense of visibility, right? So a lot of Latinos are starting to navigate through the culture shift even within corporate America, right? And
Yeah.
and it's a lot of it has to do, what I'm seeing is how do we show up when the dynamics have now shifted, right? So nobody really knows until they're inside the company, that to really fully define what the culture is looking like for them personally. So if there's somebody out there that is a corporate leader and they're navigating visibility, what's the difference between being visible and being strategic?
Ooh, that's a really good question. The first thing I would say is that any situation you're navigating, you have to be true to yourself, just in
Yeah.
general. It is
Yeah.
very hard to try to fit a mold. I'll give you a quick example. I think I was always told you're working really hard, but you're not. It's like the visibility thing, right? You're not networking enough, you're not politicking enough, etc. I tried. It's just not me. My personality doesn't work that way. Like I'm just really about, hey, I did really good work. I'd love to say that. And I have to be that way, or else anything else will stress me out. It's just it produces so much anxiety. But I think with to your question about visibility and being strategic, you want to always do great work that speaks to who you are. You also, though, need, I think, to be mindful of your time and energy and
Mhm.
have confidence in your work and who you are and know that not everyone needs to get your time and energy. So I'll tell people very practical tips. Who's your most important and critical stakeholder? That's who you answer first. That's who you always make sure you deliver to. Who's someone who trusts in your work, knows it's good, but you're not really responsible to them, right? Maybe you're a collaborator. They're not the person who does your performance review. They're not the person who decides if you get promoted. They're not the person who gives you your raises. That's the person who maybe you set expectations. Hey, I'm not going to be able, I need a little more time on this, etc. So in terms of strategic, I think it's more about prioritizing your time and your energy. It doesn't mean you're not giving everyone your best. It's just who's the person that decides the things that happen to you, who's your actual stakeholder, so you need to consistently deliver for, consistently be available, etc. Everyone else can kind of fall into a flow. Another thing that someone one time told me, this Latina leader actually at Univision, she used to say you have three circles of people. You have people who think you're amazing. You've won them over. They're your fans, they're your supporters. Keep doing good work for them. You need those folks. You have other people who, no matter what you do, will never think you're capable. They don't like your work. They don't like you, whatever it may be. Stop trying to convert them. It's a waste of time. Put them to the side. Then you have your other circle. It's the people who don't know you. They're on the fence. They don't know what to do. She goes, those are the people now you focus on. You keep your supporters happy. You focus on the people who don't know yet about you to convert them into your supporters. set aside respectfully the people who don't
Yeah.
support you. A lot of people will spend time trying to convince everyone to like them, everyone to think that they're doing good work. And the reality is, for whatever reason, maybe you're not their cup of tea. Maybe they don't even like what you focus on. It's just your scope and
Yes.
your remit of work is not what they were interested in. Move on from those folks because there's no point in putting energy there. So I think in that way you can be strategic just with time and energy and how you prioritize. And with visibility, listen, it never I think be proactive in the time that you have with people and with managers. Many people kind of show up sometimes. And this is again because things you don't learn necessarily in college or in school. So these are things now with ChatGPT and with like the internet and LinkedIn, you can learn these things. But oh, my cat, Conchita, likes to make us listen, like an
She was
eldest
she's
daughter.
making a she's making her cameo.
Yeah, like an eldest daughter, very responsible, very aware of where mother is, checking in. Thank you. But be very proactive in the meetings that you're having with people. And when you ask for someone's time or when you have a check-in, show up very prepared. You can lead that. Hi, this is what I'm working on. This is what's going really well. This is what I need help with. But again, I would say always things that are in line with your work and that feel true um to you. It's never gonna make sense for me to be at every happy hour. Like I'm not good at that or in every single interaction. I'm really good at like when you need me, I'm there, I'm doing it, and then I'm gonna check in with you and you're always gonna get things on time. But that's taken me very, very far, I would say, in my career. But you should go. You should go to networking. Like if there's a happy hour, it's always, spend some time with your colleagues outside of the office. I'm just not real good at being at all of them.
Yes, no, I get invited to quite a few too, and I'm like, "I'm so sorry,
It's like,
guys. I have my peace right now is very much
yes,
important, and my energy is very sacred." And I mean, I think anybody could probably take that as, "Ay, esta que se cree," right? Or like, "Oh, now she can't hang out with us," right? But I don't think that evolution in business or in corporate gets you there. Eventually, you will hit
yes.
that where you're just like, "No, like, I
Right.
really
Sometimes we're
can't be at people."
tired.
Yeah, it's and it people don't
I'm just
understand how much
sleepy.
you put, and I'm one of those that in
Yes.
everything I do, I give 200, which is a
Yes.
natural. It's not like I have a turn on and turn off. It's not like I can,
No,
like,
it's not happening.
moderate. It's just I'm built that I give
Yes.
you 200, but that means I'm gonna have to put 400 back in, and that's
Yes.
it's
Such a good
gonna
point.
show up probably in a way that is not very much, a customary.
Yes.
So let's push forward to present time. Now you've launched your own business
Yes. Yes.
because of baby now and all things
Mhm.
shift, of course.
Mhm.
So tell me, where are you right now?
Mhm.
Where do you want to be, or what are you manifesting? I should say, what are you manifesting in the next like 2, 3 years for your business now?
That's such a good question. I've been spending so much time with it. So I think right now, I've had the time where I'm like, "Oh, I enjoyed my son. I wanna continue to do it." I've realized how really beautiful it is to have time to, like and I've never had that before, even, like, without just to slow down, right? To have a really long conversation with my mom on the phone, to be able in the middle of the day say, "Hey, let's have lunch," things like that, and that's really beautiful, and it's changed kind of how I see my future. I did an exercise recently, and it was like, what would be your perfect day at work? And something I would have never said before, I said getting home early enough to have dinner with my husband and my son. I never cared about dinner. I was always like girl dinner. I was like 3 cheese sticks and a piece of bread, and I was like in bed because I would work so late and I traveled all the time. So I think I'm manifesting more of that. But also and sometimes it can feel like I don't know, at first I was like a little scared to say. I was like, "You know what? No, I'm also manifesting my next big corporate role." I'm like, I love motherhood, but I'm ready to dig in. And it may take a little while because I want to be really intentional with it. But I was like, "You know what? I wrapped up a really big, beautiful role and I love that team. I love the work they did there." I was literally the other day just talking to my boss. I was like I talk to these girls all the time. Loved it. I want that again. I'm like, I wanna go out there, I wanna build something again, build a team again, do that again, so that I'm excited about, but also my own thing, and so what I've done now in the interim, because 'cause I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm the first one who can say, "I like punching a clock." I mean, listen, in corporate, you never punch a clock, you work all the time.
Yeah.
But, I've said I'm not an entrepreneur per se. I like having a structure, I like having a team. I'm not a real, like, solo, person, but I'm dabbling in it now, and it's been really interesting. And it's actually my old boss has been helping me. I've gotten a few clients, I'm consulting, and so I'm building what my solo, maybe in the next few months, duo, agency will look like, and what it is for me to go without a big company name, just me, and go pitch business. What it's like, the other day I got invited to an event and I ran to a few old coworkers and people from the industry and I thought, oh, if I had been in my last role, I would have been here repping that company. I was like, but I got invited to this from me,
Yeah.
from like my own connections, from the work I'm doing on my own now. And so that's been a real confidence booster, which has been interesting to navigate and to kind of discover myself as a individual
Yeah.
in business and in corporate, to go to a conference and just talk about the business I'm doing, not the talking points and the story that I loved, that I had down
Yeah.
packed. But this is different. So that's, I think what I'm manifesting is continue to grow with that because that's given me a lot of professional confidence, which I think is really helpful. Like I'm like, oh, I am that girl, maybe. Who knew? And more of the good stuff with family and with home and the room space. Like I'm 37, I'm gonna be 38. And I think it's having my son. I'm like, I think I have a lot left in me still. I feel like all the creative, I've never felt younger, which is really, like I'm about to hit 40 and you start thinking, I was like, I don't think I've ever felt more full of life or more young or ready for endless opportunities. I'm like in the J-Lo stage where I'm like, I think I can have
Mhm.
3 or 4 careers.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
kind of, it's like not a specific thing. I'm manifesting more feelings and new experiences, but I think it'll be that. It'll be another big corporate role maybe in the next 2 years. We'll see. And then in the interim, continuing to build my individual brand and my individual business. I'm also tinkering on a podcast that hopefully in March will now be coming up that I'm doing with a longtime mentor and spending a lot of time with family. I'm excited for a warm summer where I'm not where I'm not with a recently having given birth where I can like go outside and do things. So I'm also excited for that.
Yeah. I'm
I
on the
want to have a
opposite
summer
side.
cocktail.
I am ready to start doing the traveling. I'm ready to start hitting the ground. And again, because my kids are older, I paid, I did my dues, my due
Yeah, you're like,
diligence,
I raised those 2 boys.
and
I
now it's
got through the
time.
hair
Now,
pulling.
yep, now it's time for mom to go do
Yeah.
all the 60 other things too. What would be your ideal client, or what is your ideal client?
Oh, that's such a good because I had to I'm like, all these questions are so good. Someone asked me the other day, like, "Oh, what's your, like, dream list of, companies or, like, where you would wanna be?" So I focus a lot on the beauty and CPG space, so I think the big players in that space are interesting, Unilever, P&G, they're amazing, they do, amazing work. I think LinkedIn's a really interesting place right now. I think they're at that space where they kinda have to decide, are they gonna go all in and be a social platform? Are they gonna lean
I
into
think
more.
that's what they're not
Yeah.
trying. They're trying to be the professional social platform.
Yeah, and, like, what does that mean, right? Because in order to
Yeah,
hit, like, critical mass and have scale, you gotta really widen what that means because posting about, just there's only so much that in terms of, like, people who wanna post about that, read about that, etcetera, like, video content is critical. The interesting thing is that on TikTok, some of the best performing content is educational talk and
yeah,
professional talk and marketing talk. So I think if
yep.
they can figure out how to get all those maybe do a good creator program, but get all those folks putting that content on LinkedIn too, that'll be a game changer for them. But I think they're at a really interesting inflection point. Netflix, I think, has always been really interesting too because they just added like 2 years ago advertising,
Yeah.
and that's the space I worked in. But they added advertising to their beyond their subscription channel, and there's a lot of like media companies, small news orgs that are popping up too, and like startups. AI space. I'm like giving you a few answers, but the AI space is really interesting. I think it's less ideal client, more ideal role and space, which is building. I want to be somewhere where there's a big problem to solve and there's something you can walk away from and say, hey, I did that. I think I was able to do that. Univision to a certain degree, I was able to do that. L'Oreal, they were a much more established company when I got there. So it was a little bit different versus when I came to Univision, it was more in a growth stage. But I'd love to kind of go somewhere, whether big or small, that has a big problem to solve and like builds out, like launch, a streaming service or launch a new vertical. Or hey, we went from being a professional platform to now being number 2 social platform. So that's kind of what I'm looking for, which is a big ask. That's why I know it'll take a little bit of time, but I'm confident that it'll happen.
Yeah, but I mean, if you don't put it out there, nobody's gonna know, right? And
Yeah,
somebody once said, "A closed mouth doesn't get fed." So,
oh, 100%. You got to that's the other thing I've learned. One thing that also having left my corporate role and started my own thing, I have like no shame now. I will hit up whomever. I was just talking with someone. Like, "Oh, do you know someone here?" I said, I'll hit up the CEO right now." I have no shame because it's like, I think I told someone like, "Listen, we're in a real inflection point between AI and all of the consolidating in the market and people losing jobs, but also new jobs being created. This is not the place for cringe, for worried about what people think about you. This is and people tell you all the time when they're building brands on social, cringe is at the door. You gotta be ready to be
Yeah.
cringe. So you have to with of course respect and kindness towards everyone, but I tell everyone this is not the time for being ashamed or like shy about anything. I ask me if I didn't hit somebody up and say if they're sponsoring people to go to South by Southwest because I want to go and I don't want to pay for my ticket.
Yeah.
I'm like, I got like 3 clients. This isn't in my budget right now. Yes. No shame. We'll see what they
Yeah.
say.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you have to. I mean, I have the unfortunate opposite problem where I don't have a problem posting. I don't have the time to post. I have so much content. I just don't have the time to post on my social media. And there are some things that I can do with my eyes closed and in my sleep, but then there's some where I'm
Yes.
like, can somebody just do it for me? Like this is like a less than 1 minute video, and I really just don't need. It's the small things. The small things are so difficult for me. The
Yes.
big things I can whip them out back and forth. But no,
That's
like
so
it is
interesting.
I know. I'm
Well,
just
you've
I'm
built
a
a huge platform, so that makes sense because you're both founder, but then you're like, that makes sense that like, hey, builds a whole platform. Gotcha. I can build an entire business. This one real specific video that makes a lot of sense to me.
yes, no, absolutely, which is where I'm like, one of my goals is to be able to have somebody and be like, "Guys,
Hmm.
I don't mind pitching myself out, but I would rather have somebody be like, look, I already built a brand, I already built a company, I already put the
It's all done.
everybody, can you just take this information and go find people?
Yes, and go with it. Go pitch people. Yes, yes.
Just take this and go, what do you need from me that's gonna help your job better?" But no, like of course, like I think we are a lot of people are actually. I mean, that's why that you see so many businesses doubling up in size, not sizes in itself, but just like you see more businesses coming, out of the woodwork
Yeah.
because people are saying, you know what, we're gonna do this. If we're gonna do this, we're gonna go
Yep.
all in. It's uh, or if not, then I'm just gonna stay where I was before. I'm just gonna stay going and doing the things that I was doing before. But yeah, no, same here. I've got no shame in my game either. I'm like, who do I need to talk to? Who do we need to talk to?
It's
And let's
so
make it happen.
freeing. It's so freeing. And this is like a recent thing. I mean, you've got this in your DNA. This is how you know you build something so amazing. This is recent for me because I used to be very cringe. And I'm telling you, me doing the biggest productions with the biggest celebs and everything, I could not ask someone for a favor. I could not call a connection. I was like, no, oh my God, never. Now, hi, I haven't talked to you
No,
in 5 years,
because
but
this
I
is
see
it.
that you know what you built this. You're like, no, this is not natural to me. You had to what was that like for you? Like, how did you? Because to me, you're just
I
like,
think you get to the point where you're just tired. Where there's that saying, you're tired of being sick and tired. Well, you just get to the point
"Ooh,
where you're tired of just be like, okay, this didn't work the first time. What is going on here? And obviously, the only thing between that and this is me. So, like, what do we need to do? And a lot of it was inner work.
wow,
A lot of it was so much deep inner work and breaking. Where is this coming from? What was it that happened that made this happen? And moving forward, how do I recognize it next time? Right. And then you just get sick and tired of being like, okay, I've said it in 4 different languages. You're still not understanding, but yet you still want I give you the result, but you're just not listening. So you know what? Who
yeah,
do I need to talk to? If it's not you, who do I need to talk to?
who else?" No, that's amazing. I think I had, and I don't know if this happened for you, but there was a moment where I just was like, maybe I need to believe what people are telling me.
Mhm.
Maybe like what they're saying is true. Maybe I really am that, and I'm gonna go.
Somebody did tell me that they were like, "We all believe in you, but it's not gonna make any sense if you don't believe in yourself first. Because
Wow,
we can all believe in you, but if you're not there, then like,
yeah,
we can't do anything for you. We can
wow,
see it in you, and then it just yeah, but it was a lot of inner work, a lot of inner work of just breaking myself down, staring at the mirror and saying, "Okay, what do you really want, and how are you gonna get there, and what is it you have to do right now to start working it? Because everything's ready for you, but you keep putting yourself, you know, holding yourself back. So, like, what's going on?
wow.
Nothing changes if nothing changes."
Oh my gosh, my mom tells me all the time. She had a professor in college who told her, "Si te preocupa, preocúpate." But yeah, it's like nothing changes, nothing changes. It's like you got to do something.
Yeah,
You either do
yeah.
something or you don't. And I've gotten real. That's been like a real big one with me. I've had to pull back from getting like sometimes I'm like, oh, I have the same. I get a little frustrated with someone because they're telling me kind of the same process, same problem, same problem. I think I've gotten to a space where I'm like, I don't have times for what like, for me personally, coulda, coulda, shoulda. Like, either I'm doing it or I'm not. I had a huge to-do list, and it's because I had more free time. Little things around the house, like, get the wedding dress dry cleaned, whatever, all this stuff that was sitting for, like, 2 years. When I tell you I sat down for a week and I knocked everything off that list, it was like a game changer. So I was like, things going on a list, if it lasts more than a few days, I'm either doing it or I'm not. Because, yeah, you just gotta nothing changes if nothing changes, like, you just gotta do
Yes.
it.
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
feels a
But
lot
you,
easier to do now for some reason. Before, it used to be very tough to get into that
yeah, because
mindset.
you didn't see yourself in that role. You didn't see
Mhm.
yourself as that being possible of an
Yeah.
emotion. Like, there isn't some sort of, to a certain extent, there's an emotional attachment. Yeah, there might be an experience in your past that kind of put you
Mhm.
into like
Yeah.
holding back, but it's more of an emotional attachment, I think. And so I think once you figured out that that emotional attachment can actually get removed, you're like, oh, whoa, okay, I see what you're doing. Okay, it's like almost like putting on an outfit that you've been looking and you've been eyeing. You're like, there's no way that thing's
Mm,
gonna look good on me. There's no way
yeah.
that's not my color. That's not it. And then you put it on, and you're like, oh, I guess it was.
It
And it's because you
was.
can't see yourself. There's that emotional attachment to that certain thing. But yeah, no, it's a journey. I mean, I think and that's part of entrepreneurship. Somebody once told me that if you really want to get spiritual, become an entrepreneur
I could see that. I could see that.
because it literally brings out the best and the worst of you.
See, I'm only ready for like half of that. I don't know that I'm ready for that whole spiritual journey. I'm ready for like a shows up just on key holidays type of spirituality. Like,
I
I'm
mean,
dipping my toes in it.
but I think at the same time, it's like as long as you continue to do the thing that you love doing, then it's not like
Yeah.
I think there's the entrepreneurship is a lot of it is the title based on the steps of how you're getting to your thing. So, but no, girl, I see you. You'll get there. I know you will.
I've been
So
doing this thing. Oh, sorry. Go.
no, no, go ahead.
uh, So I saw this thing on TikTok. It was 1,000, and I wrote about it on LinkedIn. But it was like this young woman was saying, "My goal for 2026 is to get 1,000 rejections." And I was like, "Oh, that's so interesting." She's like, "I'm applying for like citizenship for Portugal. I'm gonna go like try to be a ballroom dancer. I'm just doing everything because I just want to get rejected." And so I started a little tracker. I was like, "I think I'm gonna try that." Let me tell you. In the quest to be rejected, I won myself a grant. I'm like, I got into this other event. I hosted like, I'm going to this other thing I got for speaking. And it's because it's this thing of like, why not me? Why not try? And if nothing,
Hmm.
whatever. Someone said the other day too, if you were 100 rejections away from like your dream, yes, wouldn't you like be so glad every time one came through? So I realized like letting go of that cringe, letting go of that fear of rejection, just no shame. Why not? I had chatted with someone who said that they looked at life as like, why not me? If they can, why not me? And I had never thought that way. And that's an interesting perspective too. It's not kind of true who I am. I don't kind of come from that space. But sometimes I think you need a little bit of that. Like, if they can, why not me? Why can't I have that too? It's been
I
really
think
interesting.
it's the almost like the word audacity, right? It's the audacity
Yes.
of ourselves, of saying I can step into that too. Like, what makes me any different than them? I think
Yes.
it was Mel Robbins is the one that brought it up a while ago, where there's people out there that are smarter than you, that are less smarter than you, half smarter than you, half talented than you, yet are making 60 times more than you.
Hmm.
So what's wrong with this equation? And it's typically because we don't have the audacity to
Yeah.
say, why not me?
And that's speaking to like corporate when you talk about visibility and everything. That mindset of why not me, I think will take you very far too, because half of the time why you're not talking about your work or you're not presenting in a meeting is because you haven't said, well, like, yeah, I can do this too. I always remember Michelle Obama saying when it was at Harvard, she was like, oh, everyone's not that smart here. Like, hold on. And I think you need those moments. I mean, it happens in corporate too, where you're standing
Yeah.
across and you're like, what did this man just say? This makes no sense. Why was I worried about presenting this call?
Hmm.
It's just like,
So
I
what
will
would
be fine.
what would you say, Philip, would be the one thing that you would want to have us to walk away with from our conversation?
So I would say, can I say two things?
Yeah.
Okay, so the first, I think, just start. Don't worry about feeling ready. There is, and I was looking for her name because I wanted to get her name right because I was thinking about this question. Sin Nino de Guzman, but she created Clara for Creators. It's a platform for creators. You all should check it out. I'm not affiliated. I don't know her personally. I'm just like, she said something that stood out to me. She said that when you launch your business, if you're not embarrassed of your first logo, you launch too late. And that was really interesting because like you have to launch when you think you're not ready. You have to do the
Mhm.
thing when you think you're not ready. If you wait until you're ready, you've missed the opportunity. It's gone. It's done. So when
Mhm.
you're wanting something and you think, but I'm not ready yet, that's exactly when you should go. Let it be messy. Let it just happen. I have a good coworker who always says, messy action over inaction. And in tech, there's this idea of a minimally viable product. So companies all the time, massive companies, will push out apps. They aren't fully ready. They have tons of bugs, but they're just good enough. And they know that they need to get out to market quickly to get consumers. They cannot be worried about working out every bug. So as long as it's good
Yeah.
enough so that they can capture people, it's good. So it's like that has really changed my mindset too. Do not, if you're waiting till you're ready, first of all, you'll never be ready because there's always a
Yeah.
reason you'll come up with. But two, It's like, "My love, you're late. You missed the window missed you. 16 other people are doing it. You gotta do it now that you feel, unready." And the second would probably be everyone needs to let go of the cringe and not worry about anything. It's like el qué dirán. Spin it on its
Mhm.
head. They're gonna say amazing things. Don't worry about like, "Ay, qué dirán de mí?" No, get excited. They're gonna be saying you're amazing. They're gonna be so
Yeah,
impressed.
yeah.
Like, I'm
Hey, and if even
excited to
if
hear
they're
what they got to
talking,
say.
even
Even
if
though
they're
they're talking
talking ill, they're
bad,
still
they're
talking.
talking about you. Yes. Yes,
Yeah.
100%. There's entire brands, entire celebrities built off of, bad chatter.
Mhm.
They're still talking.
I
That's
feel like
that's the getting attention is the hardest thing.
yeah, it is. It is, it is, it is, and it's actually easier to achieve than anything else. Absolutely. Well, I could sit here and talk with you forever and
This
ever
has been
and ever.
amazing. This has been amazing.
It's been so much fun talking to you, Pilar. Where can people find you? Uh, how can they support you?
Yes. So you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm active across all socials, but LinkedIn is where I do most of my connecting and content creation. So you can just look me up, María del Pilar Casal, or LinkedIn.com/in/María Pilar Casal. But you can find me there, send me a connection. I'm always happy to connect. And if you're starting out in the industry or need advice or anything, or just want to kind of bounce ideas and collaborate, I'm always happy to do that. And then the podcast Out of Office is coming soon too, and you'll find that on LinkedIn as well.
Well, thank you so much, Pilar, for your time and for all of
Thank
your
you.
wisdom.
Thank
Like
you.
I said, I feel like I know you, even though I'm meeting you just like
Yeah.
everybody else too, which is why I like these types of conversations. Hefas, again, all her information, we'll drop it in the show notes as well. Make sure that you follow her. Make sure that you learn all the things from her. And if you have any questions, I'm sure she's available to be able to answer any of your questions. But again, thank you so much for
Thank
tuning
you.
in and listening or watching and enjoying these episodes. Make sure you like, follow, and share because that's the only way we can continue growing and making sure these stories are visible. Speaking of visibility, that these stories are visible because they're so important, not just to bring us motivation, but also give us actionable steps that we can take on a day to day basis. So, again, remember, come and check out the Everyday Jefa. We're just everyday women out there doing chimona things for the community and for our personal lives. Hasta la próxima, amigas. Nos vemos pronto. We'll see you later.